At dawn, another 500 acres of Alberta corn lies flattened. And yet, enormous black bears move undetected, tearing through crops and smashing beehives as farmers watch helplessly. Tens of thousands of dollars vanish overnight. Officials try trapping and releasing, but the predators always return. Who draws the line between rural survival and wild nature? This is how North American hunters and farmers are forced to fight invasive bears. And what happens next will redefine the balance between people and predators. Across the southern edge of Alberta, the landscape tells a story of loss. Once, rows of corn stretched unbroken toward the horizon. Now entire sections lie flattened, stalks snapped, ears half-eaten, leaves crushed into muddy earth. The damage is not random. Black bears work with a kind of cunning, starting deep in the center of a field where their presence goes unnoticed. They move outward in the cover of darkness, leaving only scattered paw prints and trampled stalks to mark their path. By the time the first rays of sunlight hit, more than 500 acres can show signs of a single night's raid. For farmers, the impact is immediate and devastating. A season's worth of work disappears almost overnight. Corn meant for local markets and livestock feed is shredded and spoiled, with losses climbing into the tens of thousands of dollars for each affected farm. The fields become a patchwork of destruction, with wide swaths flattened in the unmistakable pattern of a bear's foraging. The weight of each animal presses deep into the soil, leaving prints the size of a man's hand, clear evidence of the scale of the intruder. These raids do not just threaten a single harvest. They ripple through entire communities, putting pressure on small family farms already struggling with thin profit margins. Insurance rarely covers the true cost, and compensation programs often fall short of making farmers whole. For many, the sight of ruined fields means hard choices in the months ahead, whether to replant, invest in deterrence, or simply hope the bears move on. The bears themselves seem undeterred by fences or scare devices. They return night after night, adapting to every new tactic. Their intelligence is matched only by their persistence, and their hunger for high-calorie corn grows as wild food sources dwindle. The fields become battlegrounds, with each new raid pushing farmers closer to the edge. In these moments, the line between protecting a livelihood and coexisting with wildlife grows ever thinner, and the question of how to respond becomes impossible to ignore. In the quiet before dawn, the apiary sits vulnerable, rows of wooden boxes lined up in the grass. Bears are drawn by the scent of honey, their hunger sharpened by a lean spring. When they arrive, there is no subtlety. Heavy paws crush the dewy grass. Powerful jaws tear through lids, and the hives explode in chaos. The sound is unmistakable, the splintering of wood, the furious buzzing of bees fighting for survival, and the low grunts of a bear feasting on honeycomb and brood. For beekeepers, each hive represents months of labor and hope. When a bear attacks, the loss is not just honey, but entire colonies wiped out in minutes. In rural Alberta, beekeepers have counted more than 25 raids in a single year, with some losing dozens of hives in one night. The aftermath is gutting, frames scattered, bees dead or gone, and sticky trails of honey marking the bear's path back to the woods. One beekeeper, his voice still shaking, described arriving to find the remains of his season. He said it was like a battlefield. Honey everywhere, boxes smashed, bees crawling in the grass. He said he almost lost everything he worked for. For small producers, a single attack can erase a year's income. Insurance, if it exists at all, rarely covers the full cost. The emotional toll is harder to measure. Each destroyed hive is a setback that ripples through the year: lost pollination contracts, missed markets, and the daunting cost of rebuilding. Authorities respond by trapping and relocating problem bears, but the solution is temporary. Bears, driven by memory and hunger, often return within weeks. Electric fences and deterrents help, but not every beekeeper can afford them, and failures are common if the system is not perfectly maintained. In these rural communities, the sense of vulnerability grows with each attack. The threat is not abstract. It is a force that arrives in the night and leaves devastation in its wake. The rising number of raids has turned what was once an occasional risk into a constant worry, pushing some to the edge of giving up altogether. As the losses mount, the debate over how to respond grows more urgent. For many, the question is no longer if another attack will happen, but when, and how much more they can stand to lose. A veteran hunter moves through the edge of the tree line, boots sinking quietly into damp soil. He carries a battered 5-gallon bucket packed with a mixture that took years to perfect: honey, dried sunflower seeds, and overripe apples, all mashed together with a splash of cheap syrup. The smell is thick and sweet, sharp enough to cut through the early morning chill. He chooses his spot carefully, away from the obvious trails and just inside the shadow of a stand of spruce. The bait gets poured into a rusted barrel, then tucked low behind a fallen log where the wind will carry its scent deep into the brush. Every movement is slow, deliberate. He wipes his hands on his jeans, checks the ground for stray footprints, and scatters a few more seeds in a loose trail leading in from the thickest part of the woods. He climbs a scaffold built between two trees, 7 feet above the ground, the wood creaking softly beneath his weight. From here, he can see the bait site and the tangled undergrowth beyond. He settles in, pulling a faded jacket tighter around his shoulders, and waits. Hours pass. The only sounds are the ticking of insects and the distant call of a crow. He does not move, barely breathes, knowing that one careless shift could send a warning downwind. Patience is everything. Bears are unpredictable, and the old ones are wary. One whiff of human scent, and they will melt back into the forest, invisible as smoke. The hunter's eyes scan for any sign: a branch snapping, a shadow flickering between the trees. The tension grows with each minute, nerves stretched tight. The world narrows to the circle of bait and the hush of the woods. He knows that when a bear does appear, it will move almost silently, testing the air, circling the barrel with slow, heavy steps. In this moment, the hunter is exposed, relying on discipline and stillness to keep from becoming the hunted himself. Every sense is tuned to the possibility of a dark shape materializing at the edge of vision, drawn by the promise of an easy meal. A veteran hunter kneels in the shadow of a poplar, searching for the faintest trace: a bent blade of grass, a fresh mound of scat, claw marks gouged deep into bark. Each sign is a fragment of the bear's story, pieced together through years of practice. Bears move with a wariness honed by centuries of pursuit, doubling back on their own tracks, melting into thickets at the first hint of threat. Their sense of smell is unmatched, able to pick up human scent or bait from over half a mile, even when the wind shifts and the forest air is thick with rain. A single careless step, a bead of sweat, can betray the hunter's presence and send the bear slipping away before the hunt truly begins. The gear reflects the stakes. For archers, the Matthews V3X stands out, a compound bow engineered for speed and precision, launching arrows at 350 feet per second. At 45 yards, a shot must be perfect to penetrate hide and muscle. There is little room for error. Bow hunters weigh every variable: arrow weight, broadhead design, trajectory. A wounded bear is unpredictable, sometimes vanishing into the brush, sometimes turning to fight. Each draw is deliberate, every movement practiced, because the margin for error is measured in inches and seconds. Rifle hunters rely on the Ruger Hawkeye or the .338 Winchester Magnum, weapons built for power and reliability. The preferred range is 60 to 100 yards, close enough for accuracy, distant enough to avoid a charge. Even so, 2 or 3 shots are often fired to ensure a clean kill, especially if the bear's angle or cover complicates the shot. Hunters study ballistics, adjusting for wind, distance, and the animal's movement, knowing that a missed shot can mean a lost bear or a dangerous encounter. Success is never guaranteed. Binoculars scan ridgelines and creek beds for the black shimmer of fur. Hunters memorize the land, where tracks cross muddy banks, where berries draw bears, where logs are torn apart for grubs. The sharp, musky scent of a bear lingers long after it is gone, a warning and a promise. Older boars, in particular, seem to sense pursuit, circling bait sites from downwind, waiting just out of sight. For every bear harvested, hours are spent in silence, learning from the land and from failure. The contest is measured in patience and respect for a wild intelligence that refuses to be outmatched. In the eyes of wildlife officers, the hunt is never a free-for-all. Every spring, the numbers are set with precision. In Alberta, 3,000 black bear licenses are issued, each one accounted for in a database that tracks not just who hunts, but how many bears are taken and where. The process is deliberate. Licenses are capped, and every hunter is limited to a single bear per season. Success rates hover at a quarter. Out of those 3,000 permits, only about 750 bears are harvested in a typical year. The rest slip back into the forest, unseen and untouched. The quota system acts as a control knob, fine-tuned each year based on field reports and population surveys. Wildlife managers walk a tightrope, balancing the needs of farmers and ranchers against the long-term health of the bear population. Too many licenses, and the risk is overharvest. Too few, and the raids on crops and hives spiral out of control. The data drives every decision. Each harvested bear is reported, tagged, and logged by conservation officers who use the numbers to adjust future quotas and identify trouble spots. For rural communities, these regulations are more than paperwork. They shape the local economy. The value of a single bear stretches far beyond the hunt itself. Meat from an adult black bear can fetch up to $1,000 at specialty restaurants. Skins, prized for their quality, sell to craft shops and collectors for $200 to $500. When all is tallied, a harvested bear can bring in $1,600 to $2,600. For families living on the edge of the wilderness, this income can mean the difference between staying afloat and falling behind. But the stakes go beyond dollars. The license fees paid by hunters help fund conservation programs, research, and enforcement. In many ways, the system turns the bear from a source of loss into a source of support. Yet the tension remains. Every license issued is a promise to keep the balance, protecting crops, sustaining rural livelihoods, and ensuring the wild remains wild. As one officer puts it, we are not just managing bears. We are managing the future of these communities, one season at a time. A battered pickup pulls off the gravel road beside a long stretch of wire and posts. The man behind the wheel is not a hunter, but a technical advisor called in by desperate neighbors. He steps out, voltage tester in hand, and checks the fence line, a silent barrier pulsing with energy. In this corner of Alberta, electric fencing has become the front-line defense for farmers and beekeepers hoping to keep bears at bay without reaching for a rifle. The specs are precise. For black bears, the fence must deliver at least 4,000 volts, though most advisors recommend 6,000 or more. Anything less, and a determined bear will push through, unfazed by a weak pulse. The energizer, the heart of the system, needs to push out at least half a joule. A fence built for cattle or deer won't cut it. Bears require a jolt strong enough to send them running after a single nose-to-wire encounter. A standard setup uses 3 to 6 strands of high-tensile wire, spaced 8 to 10 inches apart. The lowest strand sits close to the ground, targeting the bear's sensitive nose or paw. The highest is set at about 40 inches, high enough to prevent a bear from simply stepping over. Every post is driven deep to withstand the force of a curious animal leaning its full weight into the wires. Grounding rods are buried in clusters to keep the current steady, even when the soil dries out in summer. When installed and maintained, electric fences keep out bears 90% of the time, sometimes more. The numbers are convincing. A properly built fence can protect an entire apiary or orchard for years, with maintenance costs under $2 per acre each season. But the initial investment is steep, running from $2,000 to $5,000 for a single field or bee yard. For small operations, that price can feel out of reach without help. Government grants and wildlife agency subsidies cover up to half the cost in some regions, but funds are limited and applications stack up each spring. The advisor points out the weak spots: vegetation growing up into the wires, a section where snow collapsed a post, a battery running low after a week of cloudy skies. Most failures aren't the bear's fault, but human error, wires too far apart, voltage dipping below the threshold, a missed check after a summer storm. When the fence fails, it fails completely. Bears learn fast, and one successful breach can turn a cautious animal into a repeat offender. For those who can afford it, electric fencing offers hope, a way to protect hives and crops without bloodshed. The advisor moves on to the next farm, toolbox in hand, knowing that every strong fence buys a little more peace. But for many, the choice between prevention and culling isn't simple. The fence line is just one piece of a larger fight, where cost, labor, and luck all play their part. Today, wildlife managers walk a razor's edge, balancing human safety, food security, and the survival of native black bears. As farms expand and wild habitats shrink, these conflicts only intensify. The choices we make now shape both rural livelihoods and the fate of North America's bears. Where we draw the line between coexistence and control will define this landscape for generations. What would you do? Let us know below.